Hi, so I haven't made a video in quite a long time, but I was thinking about something that I wanted to share that I've been looking into. I work with people a lot regarding reconnecting to their hearts, because one thing that we don't realize is that we're not completely connected to our hearts. And this starts when we're really young, because when you're little, you're connected to your heart, you're still shiny, you're still in expansion, but that first look of disapproval, that first you're bad, and then there's the teachers, you're not good enough, your grades are bad enough. It's like a brick in the wall. Then you start putting up shields because you don't want to get hurt. And after a while, we lock our own selves out because we don't want to have to feel that pain. It's just so deep. And it's not that our parents and our teachers and they mean to do it. It's just a dysfunctional way. It's not a blame game. It's just how they were raised, and that's all they know how to give us. And so when you're growing up, you go from the id to the ego. So your ego's still being developed. So your brain's like a computer and it's being programmed. And your ego was originally created to protect you. So it kind of comes from like the amygdala, the oldest part of your brain is where like fear is. So your brain's being programmed to fear things that we don't really need to be afraid of. Like we're supposed to be afraid of bears coming to get us and things like that. But when you're little and, you're hurt, that's still an injury. And so you're being programmed to fear emotional injuries, and to be protected from that. So you're being taught, and programmed with these things. So your brain keeps spitting out these thoughts, and they go over and over in your head, and you don't realize that you need to step back and become the observer. So basically, everyone's talking about how the gut is like the second brain, because they've discovered that the gut has neurons and neurotransmitters, the same as the brain. And you create new neural pathways and things like that in your brain using, neurons and neurotransmitters. So when you're connected to your gut, you're not connected to your heart. And the heart, they discovered, has the same neurons and neurotransmitters as the brain does as well. But if we have a wall up and we're not connected to our hearts, we're in gut coherence. So this is where that hole inside of us comes from, that emptiness that we want to fill, where we're looking for love to fill us up, and that's where we're trying to get it from wherever. It's transactional relationships, and it's not something that we consciously do, and we're mistaking that feeling of being full with food, whatever we put inside of us that makes us feel full, and it goes from shopping, like you buy that new thing, like this is the one thing that's going to make me feel complete. If I get this job, buy this house, have this car. But as you get those things, you feel good for a little while, but then you realize you can't really buy happiness. At one point, you're going to have to work for it, because it's temporarily satiating that need to feel whole and complete and full, So what happens is, which we need to do, is realize what were the things that first, locked us out of our hearts. Because I didn't know I was locked out of my own heart. I started thinking, God, I love people and I'm an empath and I feel so much. And when I started, looking at where's my love light, I could barely see it. And I first discovered this when my second NDE, when, Father God came to me, and I was so ashamed of my life, and I was the one putting myself down. I said, I haven't lived to glorify you. And he told me that every experience I had, everything I went through, every time I learned a lesson, every single thing, it goes back to him, because we're all just fractals. We're all just reflections of God, and we're all reflections of each other. And how would God know himself except through us, through a reflection, So it's really hard, because where God lives, that part of us that is the divine lives in our heart. And if we can't access that, we don't feel complete. And so that's why we seek love from other people, and we feel that emptiness with, that temporary love. But it's a lot to ask for someone else to complete you, but you have that within you already. You are already complete. All you have to do is the shadow work is kind of, you can't really avoid it. Why am I feeling so anxious? Why am I in fear all the time? Why am I listening to these thoughts? And it's all that dysfunctional programming, generation after generation. And what we have to do for our kids and our future generations is to stop the dysfunctional programming and undo it and reprogram our minds with the real thoughts, the positive thoughts, that we are amazing, we're beautiful, that we are love. And instead of thinking of love as an action, as something we do, it's a state of being. One thing when I wake up is I immediately, move my attention and my focus to my heart. And I just kind of focus on, I breathe in a big breath through my heart, and I kind of pull down light into me, and I feel it tingling in my hands, and any kind of energy I was, carrying, it steps right out. I send it back to the light. And, I just step into that heart, into that love light, into that space where we can dwell, because they say the kingdom of heaven is within, and truly it is. It's in our hearts. And it's not necessarily the heart chakra, because the heart chakra is there to connect the lower chakras to the higher chakras. And it's the closest thing to your love light, to your soul's love. And this is your heart of hearts, and it's scary to venture back in there and look at all those, those bricks, those pieces, those things that we have put and stashed away in there, and to unpack that and say, okay, look, this is what's keeping me from being the best self, from connecting to my higher self, from being the divine. Let me look at this with love. Let me look at this for what it is. The people that said these things and did these things to me, they didn't know any better. They're not connected to their own hearts. They don't know how to love. No one taught them. But I can teach myself, and I can teach my kids. So I just wanted to share this with you guys, that, you can find your love light. And once you raise your frequency and you're in that space of love, it affects everyone around you. And it's basically, I've heard that your aura and your energy reaches about 6 feet around you. But I've also read that they had monks literally meditate in cities on love, and the crime went down. So I'm a lighthouse for my entire neighborhood. I mean, I live in the Bronx, and 7% of the crime of all 5 boroughs happens in the Bronx, and 85% happens in my neighborhood. I mean, I went from the runways of Paris, Milan, and New York to a bad relationship, drugs, and the street. And I've died twice and come back. And I've had so many near-death experiences. It's not... I mean, the last, time I was in a car accident, I was given a choice to live or die, and I said, just bring me home to my son. Because honestly, I wanted to go to the other side, but I knew I had a purpose here. And so we all have, a light inside of us. So even if you think you're not doing anything, once you step into your light, hold the light, because it affects everyone around you. And everyone you walk by and brush by, you raise their frequency.